Geiger Investments presents the Retirement Focus Academy with Kevin Geiger. There are many pieces to the modern retirement puzzle. This show talks about those pieces of retirement and the tools used to help the retired and soon to be retired toward their lifetime goals. Welcome. The Academy is on the air.
Welcome to the Retirement Focus Academy, powered by Geiger Investments and Kevin Geiger. I'm Mark L.A. Glander with us today. And of course, if you want to know more about Kevin and the team, you can always go to the website, GeigerInvestments.com, G-E-I-G-E-R, GeigerInvestments.com. And of course, there is a great resource for anyone that's nearing retirement or already in retirement that may have some questions, and that is, of course, the Retirement Focus Academy website. There's never a cost for you. There's on-demand, there's in-person classes, there's all kinds of great information. Check it out, retirementfocusacademy.com. There's Medicare information on there. There's Social Security information, income, investments, healthcare, all those kind of things. There's all kinds of topics and workshops that are built into the Retirement Focus Academy website. If you have any questions, you can always call the team, 843-375-8700, but it's just retirementfocusacademy.com. Glad you're with us today. And Kevin is a pilot. I don't know if everybody realizes that Kevin is a pilot. We're going to talk about that retirement is a lot like being a pilot. So, Kevin, I guess before we get into this, maybe explain the pilot background of Kevin Geiger.
Okay, good. Yeah, so I've been a private pilot now for, I think it's 20 years now. So I've been flying for a pretty long time. It's always been a passion of mine to be able to be a pilot. Almost decided to join the Air Force when I was younger. Didn't end up doing that. Then I thought about becoming a commercial pilot. Didn't end up doing that, which... and unfortunately, I know enough people in the commercial pilot industry, and it's been kind of a mess in the last, 10 or 12 years. But, I absolutely love flying. It's one of my biggest passions, and, what's neat about it is there's just so much that goes into being a pilot. It's not just like jumping into a car. There's more stuff that goes into it, and just the joy of being able to be in the air is one of the most amazing things that I could ever say in this entire world. So I love it, and it's definitely something I think anyone that has an interest for should think about doing.
So did you grow up around Chicago, in Chicago?
Yep. I grew up in Chicago, born in Chicago.
After school, then you just go to O'Hare and watch planes come in and out? Is that what you did?
Yeah, there is an airport that I
Midway.
fly into. Yeah, the airport I fly into is the old Palwaukee Airport. Okay. So anyone that's familiar with Chicago and heard of Palwaukee Airport, which now is called Chicago Executive, when I was a kid, there used to be a restaurant right on the field, and so you used to be able to listen to the radio calls right there at your table, and it was amazing. So I remember just watching the planes taking off, and you see these private jets, smaller planes, and it was so neat. And it was like something I've always wanted to do. And my aunt worked for United Airlines, and so I was, back in the day when you're able to go on the planes early and stuff like that, I was able to go in the cockpit and sit there and play with the controls. I mean, it was such a neat time, when I was younger versus today.
That's awesome. Yeah.
But it was always something I've always wanted to do, and definitely took this on my private end to be able to, enjoy my passion and things like that.
How old were you when you started to get your own private pilot's license? And then what is the process like? Because I imagine you just don't go down and you do a couple touch and goes and you got a license. It's probably a little more complicated than that.
Yeah, no, there is. So when I finished college is when I decided to finally start getting into it. I'd just gotten into my career, starting to do well with it, but I decided I was just missing something, and I wanted to become a private pilot. So sure enough, went around to a couple different airports in the area. And found a flight school, and all this kind of stuff, and there's a lot that goes into that. And I don't think people understand that, unlike getting your driver's license, to becoming a pilot, there's so much that goes into this, right? So there's, you got to read a book that's, like a huge Bible-sized book of everything you need to know about, the FAA regulations, how to handle certain characteristics, and then you do flight training, where you'll fly 50 to 60, and sometimes I know people have been doing almost 80 hours of flying before they're ready to do what's called a check ride, where you actually go up with someone that's an FAA approved person to basically check out to make sure you're doing all these maneuvers and all these emergency things properly before they can sign off and give you your license. And I remember mine real well. I had a gentleman who was a 777 pilot at the time for United Airlines, and he put me through.
And a 777 pilot means what?
basically, think of the Boeing 777 plane.
Okay.
So that's what he had flown. And he had thrown me through the ringer. I mean, I through every emergency thing I could possibly think of. And, you just want to break down and cry because you're like, I'm going to fail this thing, right? And I just kept fighting it and figuring everything out I could try to figure out. And then we land, and I'm literally like, I'm done. I failed. I'm done. I'm not going to be able to do this. And, he says, okay, shut the plane off after we parked. He looks over to me. He goes, you know what? I'm passing you for one main reason. He's like, because I threw a lot at you, and some things weren't done 100%, but then other things you were doing fine, stuff like that. But he says, you never gave up. That was the number one reason why he passed me. He says, everyone's going to be in an emergency situation at some point in their life. Hopefully not, but it might happen, I guess. He says, but the fact that you just kept going with it and fought it all the way to the end is the reason why you got passed and stuff like that. I was like, wow, this is, thank
cool.
you. My ego got pushed over the top, right? And so I was so excited about it. But, it's just, there's so much stuff that goes into, being a pilot. And so when you're starting to learn how to fly, you'll end up doing a lot of takeoffs and landings and all that kind of stuff. You learn how to, read checklists. Checklist is a huge part about being a pilot. You need to be able to go down a list every time you're flying. Before you, even start the plane, you're doing what's called a pre-flight. Walking around the plane, checking all these things, checking the fuel to make sure there's no water in it. There's so many things that go into it, right? And then when you get in the plane and you start flying, you got to go through the checklist. Before you start the engine, when you're getting ready to take off, as you're climbing out, as you're descending to land. And if you got to follow these things, because if you don't, you might miss something that's critical. And let's face it, you're in the air, and gravity is always going to win, right? So you want to make sure that plane is in tip-top shape. You want to make sure you're doing all the configurations you need to do so you can get up in the air safely and get back down on the ground safely. So that's why checklists are so important. But anyone that's ever looking to get their pilot's license or ever had a passion for it, I highly recommend it. It's the most amazing experience I think anyone can ever have.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And if you'd like the team at Geiger Investments to fight for you and your retirement, do you have any questions or concerns? Hey, Kevin, when can I retire? Do I have enough? Will my money last as long as I do? Will my loved ones be okay if something happens to me? 843-375-8700 is the number. There's no cost. There's no obligation to chat with the team. They're here to help. Just don't know if they can until they hear your situation. 843-375-8700. I'm Mark Elliott. Kevin Geiger, of course, with Geiger Investments. Him and his wife, Lauren, started the company. They also have the Retirement Focus Academy website and the non-for-profit workshops, retirementfocusacademy.com. So would you say that your experience as a pilot and your experience as a financial advisor now for over 20 years, that it really kind of goes together in helping your clients? I mean, the how you have to operate a plane is kind of how you have to go through that checklist with your clients, I would imagine, as well.
Absolutely. And that's the thing. So being a pilot is all about discipline, right? And being in retirement, it's all about being disciplined too. You just can't wing it. I can't just get into a plane and never check anything, go up in the air and fly it. Because what happens if I have no fuel in the plane? What happens if I have no oil in the plane? There's all these things that come into when you're using this checklist. And so every time I go fly, I'm always going through those checklists. Well, it's the same thing when we sit down with people. As a financial advisor, I've brought my pilot skills, if you want to call it, into my financial investment world where every time we sit down with a client, I'm going through a checklist, whether it's in my mind or on the ones on paper that we go through, to really check off each box to make sure that we're covering everything that's important, that we know is going to be important for you, and things that you might not even thought about, and make sure we're crossing the T's and dotting the I's, because it's real important to follow these little checklists anytime we sit down with someone new. And even with our current clients, we're going down these checklists to make sure that we're covering where they are at today, what's changed, how we're going to address new environmental issues, because obviously we got inflation that's been becoming a problem. We don't know where this stock market's going to go in the near future. There's so many variables that go into this stuff. So so what's neat about me is, like I said, as being a pilot, I bring that discipline, I bring that checklist, I bring that, that process into the workspace, because I feel that the two and two kind of work together. And I think it's kind of neat to bring that analogy of a pilot being just like, someone in retirement and being someone in the financial industry world, because it does have to work in an order. And if you do things backwards or you don't do it completely, you're only going to cause issues for yourself down the road. So it's real important, that they all kind of work together.
Yeah, so when you sit down with clients and you create an income plan, an investment strategy, a tax-efficient strategy, a healthcare, long-term healthcare plan, legacy, estate planning, Social Security is in the income part, Medicare is in the healthcare part. And if we miss any of those areas, because they're really all tied together, just like when you're doing your pre-flight checklist on your plane, they're all tied together. It's not like you can just skip some of them. And I think a lot of people, when it comes to retirement, they think only of the investment part. Income is really where retirement starts, but the healthcare, the legacy, all of those things are tied into it. Everything is always woven together, I would think.
Yeah, it is. And that's really what it is when you look at our checklist right in the plane, we have our pre-flight, the stuff we do before we even get in the plane. The checklist to start the engine, the checklist before you're setting everything up. You're setting where your navigation is, you're setting your radios up, you're checking all this kind of stuff. And then before you even take off, you're doing checklists. And then you have a checklist to take off. And then you have a checklist to climb out. I mean, there's so many things that go into it. Well, it's the same thing with retirement, right? You're going into retirement. This is a whole new world for you. And it's a scary world for a lot of people because this is something they don't fully understand. They think they do because if they've been doing their life like they have been, they've had kids, if they had kids, they've gotten them through school, maybe through college, and they're moving forward, and you kind of feel like you're a success, right? You've moved forward, you've saved money, you're now ready for retirement. Here's the problem though. There are so many more variables in retirement that you're not aware of, that you're not probably going to be prepared for. So sitting down with a professional who's going to go through these checklists to make sure that we're checking off all the areas. Do we have the healthcare situation figured out? Because, Medicare is a big piece of the puzzle, and you've got to make the right decisions with Medicare the day you become eligible, because so many times, with our other company, Carolina Medicare, we've seen there's too many mistakes left, out there that people aren't doing things, or sometimes they just take Part A and Part B, which is the original Medicare, and don't add anything else to it. And now they're exposing themselves to a 20%, expense every time they get sick and things like that. And then they try to go into a new plan down the road. And the problem is now they have to go through underwriting because they missed that opportunity to get into it. Or like I said, maybe you have a younger spouse. What are you doing to ensure that younger spouse is going to be financially sound if and when you were to pass away? There's all these things, and a lot of people are like, well, I'll just have money saved up. But maybe you should set up different plans and structure things out properly so you're doing what's right to take care of that spouse. I mean, there's so many things that go into this thing, but that's where our checklists come into play. This is when we sit down and we look at everyone's situation, because everyone's going to be unique and different, and that's what's so neat about this industry is, even though we do a lot of things the same, with checklists and things like that, everyone's situation's different. So I actually get joy out of building a custom plan that's going to be perfect fit for what their needs are going to be. But you won't know that until you sit down and go through that checklist to figure out where the weaknesses are, what needs to be addressed, and performing a plan that's going to be executed properly so you can go through your retirement successfully and you can make sure that your spouse and your family are taken care of in the end. That is the number one thing that everyone needs to be doing to be successful.
843-375-8700 if you would like to talk with Kevin and Lauren and the team at Geiger Investments about where you are on your road to retirement. 843-375-8700. Again, there's no cost for this chat. There's no cost to even come in and sit down and talk with them either. 843-375-8700. And if you just want to do a little due diligence on your own and try to find out about some different areas of retirement that you're not really sure about, you can always go to the non-for-profit website, Retirement Focus Academy. There's a bunch of workshops on there, all different topics related to retirement. That's retirementfocusacademy.com. More with Kevin Geiger on Retirement Focus Academy right after this.
You know what you want to do in retirement, but do you know how to get there? Get the retirement planning information you need by joining Kevin Geiger of Geiger Investments for the Retirement Focus Academy. What's the best way for you to take Social Security? When can you sign up for Medicare, and what does it actually cover? What and is there a way to lower your tax bill? These and much more will be discussed. To enroll in an upcoming virtual Retirement Focus Academy course, visit retirementfocusacademy.com or call 843-790-9293. Plan today so you can do the things you've dreamt about doing in retirement. Sign up for the Retirement Focus Academy with Kevin Geiger of Geiger Investments at retirementfocusacademy.com or call 843-790-9293. Advisory services offered through Black Ridge Asset Management, LLC, a registered investment advisor. Securities offered through Peak Brokerage Services, LLC, member FINRA SIPC. Black Ridge Asset Management, LLC and Geiger Investments are separate and independent entities from Peak Brokerage Services, LLC. Our firm is not affiliated with the U.S. government.
You're listening to the Retirement Focus Academy with Kevin Geiger, powered by Geiger Investments. 843-375-8700.
Kevin is a pilot, and he is a private pilot. He's got a 1977 Cessna 421C, but he can fly to Chicago, fly down to Florida, fly over to Atlanta. Not going to go to Arizona in that plane, not quite fast enough, but he loves being a pilot and has grown up always dreaming of being a pilot, and now he is a pilot. And we're talking about the comparison between the checklist that Kevin has to go through pre-flight, post-flight, in-flight, all the different things that are going on. There's always a checklist, and you got to kind of check them off systematically. Retirement is kind of the same way, right? Before you get into retirement, you have to figure out, hey, do I have enough? How long will it last? What happens if we have an illness in the family? What happens if somebody passes early? What happens if we both hit the age of 100? How are we going to make sure that our money lasts that long? What about health care? What about legacy and estate planning? Social Security, when do we start it? Medicare, which do we choose? There's so many different parts of retirement, and we're kind of talking about the kind of the similarity between being a pilot like Kevin and what he does for his clients at Geiger Investments. If you'd like to learn more, you have questions yourself, you can always go to the free website, the non-for-profit website that Kevin and Lauren started. It's retirementfocusacademy.com. There's a bunch of different workshops, all topics related to retirement on there. There's on-demand, there's in-person classes, there's just all kinds of options. That's retirementfocusacademy.com. Now, we are at the end of August. We're moving along. This year has been interesting, for sure. Not as crazy as last year, but there's still some interesting parts. And Kevin, you've got kids. They're in school. They're back in school, and I'm sure everything went smooth. Everything was, yeah, sure, whatever you want to do. You want to wear a mask? Go ahead. If you don't, that's fine. Probably no controversy in South Carolina on that.
It was quite interesting. I will tell you, they really tried to push the mask mandate 2 days before school started. Of course, they lost the battle because everyone kind of came at them the day after. But it's amazing to finally have the kids back at school. Have our lives back on track in a sense. They definitely need to be entertained as much as possible. With only so many camps we can sign them up for, and so having them back at school has been an amazing thing. And kind of getting back to life, if you want to call it, and kind of moving forward. So. But
so I got an update. I got Isabel now as a senior. Yes.
Yep.
And
she's
Kayla's going to fourth
grade.
Blake's a first grader now.
Yeah, wow. Senior. So
they just keep on going, don't they?
Yeah, and Isabel, she's starting to look at colleges now. So she's thinking Clemson, a couple other schools. So now we have to do the tour. So this is the fun part. Now Lauren, on the other end, she's like, no. I'm taking her on the tours. You just stay home and watch the
the other kids.
I'm like, well, this is not fair. I want to go see these schools and stuff like that. But it's a neat time for her, especially with high school now, because she's completed so many credit hours that she pretty much has half day schools now. So this semester she's got a half day. Next semester I think she goes in at like 11 and she's done by like 1:30 or something. It's crazy. So unlike my days in high school where, senior year, we were there from the beginning of the morning until the end, there was no such thing as late start and early release, so as far as I remember. So good for her. She's done really, really well in school, and, I can only hope the best for her with wherever she decides to go.
Yeah, absolutely. That's cool. So school is underway, and we hope everybody makes it through unscathed, and the teachers do as well as the administrators. It's a different time. I can tell you that being in school in the 70s, like I was. So it is different. But you think about retirement. Retirement is totally different than my grandparents, back in the 70s when they were retired. It's totally different. They had a pension, they had Social Security. They didn't really need any income, because if they did, they could just put money into a CD and get 10, 12%, and they're winning the game basically all the time. Income was not a problem. Today's retirees, it's more about income. Where's your income going to come from? Because most of us don't have retirements. So we're talking about the checklist that you have to do as a pilot before you get on the plane. When you get in the plane, you start to do things, and when you get done, there's a post-flight checklist as well. What types of checks should someone about ready to retire, or maybe they're early in retirement, what kind of checklist should they be thinking about? What are the areas of importance?
Well, that's a great question, right? Because let's just say you're a few years out from retirement, and you knock on our door and say, hey, Kevin, I'd like to sit down with you. We're like 2 or 3 years out, and we just want to kind of have a game plan as far as what we should be doing and stuff like that. First thing we usually do is we sit down and we go, okay, let's look at your current situation. What do you have as far as debt still out there? Do you still have a mortgage, a car payment? Do you still have college expenses from your kids from before? If you're deciding you wanted to pay for that stuff, all that kind of stuff. And then we take a look at all the stuff they've done to save, right? And look at everything they've had for retirement savings. And then we start to basically try to formulate a plan. And what's neat about this is we go through this checklist of stuff and ask all these different questions. And then we kind of put a game plan together. And what's neat about it is sitting down with these people, especially in the second meeting, going, here's a rough draft that we wrote in pencil. Here's how we see your plan working out. Here's how we're going to create that income scenario for yourself, because this is the number one concern you should have in retirement. If you're not thinking about how you're going to provide yourself income that's going to be sustainable for your whole lifetime and your spouse's lifetime, you're not doing what's right for yourself. Because again, unless you have a pension, which is very rare today, but unless you have a pension, you need to be looking at this as your number one concern. And then obviously healthcare goes into that and so on. But so we sit down, we put a whole plan together, and we show them, here's how we're going to create the income plan. Here's how we're going to, create a plan that's going to allow you to continue to grow your retirement savings, because you're going to need that down the road, as cost goes up. And as we set up an income plan, that income plan might not be enough down the road. So we need to make sure that we're putting safety nets in place for down the road and bigger expenses, right? And then from there, then we talk about where they're currently at with their investments, making sure they're not taking too much risk. Because all too often, and I see this all the time, people come in and go, well, no, I'm fine. I'm in an S&P 500 index fund and something else. I go, you realize that's a high risk, index, right? It's fine when you're younger and you're trying to accumulate, but if you're a couple years away from retirement, you've got to start toning that back. You've got to stop taking too much risk. We've got too many variables today that this is not like 6-7 years ago when the market was just bonkers and just continued to go. It didn't matter what stock or mutual fund or ETF you bought, they're all doing fantastic. Well, now we have inflation. Now we got COVID. Now we got this whole thing going on in Afghanistan. All these kind of variables that are out there that is going to have a bigger effect on what's going to happen with your retirement savings. So we sit down, we put a plan together, figure out how to reduce that risk, so we make sure that we have the plan that we put in place is going to work when you retire 2 or 3 years from now. So it's neat. So I enjoy doing that kind of stuff with people that are coming up to retirement.
So you think about, where are you on your road to retirement? Do you have an income plan, investment strategy, a tax-efficient strategy? Do you have a healthcare plan, a long-term care plan? Do you have legacy and estate all planned out? What about when and how to start Social Security? Do you start at the same time? Do you stagger those as a married couple? How do you do that? What about Medicare? What are your decisions going to be when you get to the age of 65? A lot of variables here. The number to chat with Kevin and Lauren and the team at Geiger Investments is 843-375-8700. Again, there's no cost for this. 843-375-8700. And I would imagine that you work with a lot of couples that are, they're couples, right? They're married. So my guess is that every single one of them come in on the same page, right? There's never a disagreement. They're always like, sure, my husband handles all the monies, and I'm good with him taking all the risk that he wants.
That's about 1 out of 100, right? But 99 out of 100, it typically, I would say this is typically how it works. There's always the one spouse that comes in, let me take that back. The one spouse that actually calls us and says, okay, I want to set up a meeting, heard you on the radio or saw you on TV, and I'm concerned, can we set up a meeting? Sure. And so they set up the meeting. And there they are, the husband and wife come, walking in, and a lot of times, we get a lot of phone calls from the wives. And they love meeting with Lauren, especially. So a lot of times we'll do a joint meeting where it's me and Lauren meeting, because we feel like it's important to bring both perspectives. Because this is the one thing that you get a little differently in our office. When we both get to meet with you, she's looking to make sure that she's making sure that the wife is being heard, making sure her needs are there, making sure we're addressing all that stuff. Meanwhile, I'm sitting there kind of like an overall person, looking at where he's at, figuring out what his concerns are and things like that. But a lot of times we sit down, the wife had called us and said, hey, I'm concerned about this stuff. And they come in. And I would tell you almost every time, and it's almost like clockwork. They sit down, the wife's in the meeting, right? He's sitting there with his arms crossed, sitting back in his chair. You could tell he doesn't even want to be there because he's got it all figured out, and and he's like, I've been making so much money in the last 10 years in my 401k. why do I need someone like this? So what's neat is we sit down and I start asking tons of questions. I start addressing things that I know for fact, a lot of them they're not even thinking about, both of them. And all of a sudden you'll start seeing him creep his chair in. You'll see him move his chair forward, his arms go onto the table, and you're finally realizing I'm finally getting his attention, right? And so what's neat about this is, now all of a sudden, I look at him and go, I get it. You've thought you wanted to do this on your own, and you probably could, but why would you want to risk destroying your retirement going forward? All these little plans you had, whether you're going to play golf 5 days a week or whatever the case would be, why destroy it when you can work with a professional that's going to make sure everything is covered, right? The T's are crossed, the I's are dotted. We're ensuring that we're building an income plan. We're ensuring that we're not taking too much risk with the portfolio. We're ensuring we're having your healthcare situation figured out. And then we're building a legacy plan if you want to pass assets on to your kids, and we'll show you a way to be strategic about doing that without affecting your retirement savings so you can enjoy your retirement, because that's our job. Let us do what we need to do so you can enjoy your life. It's well worth the cost of working with someone like ourselves to make sure that there's no mistakes made that you could easily make on your own. So I love it when we sit down with those people, because it's so neat just to watch the other spouse just sit there in the chair. I mean, there's nothing better than watching the arms crossed.
So now they're engaged, yeah. So
and it's great to get them engaged.
Never thought about that, yeah. So once you meet with your clients and prospective clients, and like couples like that, for example, I think, a lot of people have sat down with the insurance agents. Hey, I need home insurance, I need life insurance, I need car insurance, whatever it is that they're, as you're working through your working years, and may have a stockbroker that helps them grow their money. It's all about growing our money. And certainly those are important. But my guess is most have never sat down with a company like Geiger Investments, a retirement planning group, here to help put things together, but then to be with them for the next 30 or 40 years. How does that all play out?
Well, that's just it. We are really geared towards retirement people, right? People going into retirement, and we focus on being a part of their life. I would say it's you become a part of the Geiger investment family. We want to become a part of your family because we want to make sure that we're doing everything that needs to be done. We're about reducing risk and making sure that we're covering everything that needs to be there for your retirement. Working with a stockbroker, he's not going to be the person that's going to be looking at your health insurance, looking at making you tax efficient in retirement and doing all these things. That's what we do. We cover those areas because it's important that you're doing the right things for yourself in retirement. We're not in the growing stages anymore. We're in the preservation stage, right? And creating an income stage and all these other things. You need to make sure you're working with an individual that's going to be doing the right things so you don't run out of money in retirement.
So again, that number, if you'd like to get this whole process started, there's no cost and there's no obligation either. You come in and sit down with the team. It's not like you're a client of Geiger Investments. This is a two-way street. You're the CEO. It's your retirement. It's your hopes and dreams. Kevin and the team at Geiger Investments are your CFO. Look at it that way. They're the chief financial officer. Here's things maybe you didn't think about that really you should think about. Here's kind of how we put this together. And that's the idea. You come in and you find out, and you're going to, what you don't know, you don't know. So it's a great opportunity to sit down with the team at Geiger Investments. It's 843-375-8700. Again, there's no cost, there's no obligation, there's no pressure, there's no judgment either. Kevin and Lauren and the team are here to help you live the retirement that you've always hoped you can. They don't know. They don't know if you can. They don't know what your hopes and dreams are yet. That's the idea. You call. Let's talk. 843-375-8700 again is the number. 843-375-8700. And I would always encourage you to check out the retirementfocusacademy.com website. A great resource for anyone nearing retirement or in retirement, and there's never a cost to you to go to the Retirement Focus Academy, whether it's on demand, whether it's in-person workshops, a lot of opportunities for you. retirementfocusacademy.com. Kevin, enjoyed our show today, enjoyed the chat. Enjoy the rest of the weekend. Have a great week. We'll do it again next week.
Sounds good, Mark, and take care, y'all.
Advisory services offered through Black Ridge Asset Management, LLC, a registered investment advisor. Securities are offered through Peak Brokerage Services, LLC, member FINRA and SIPC. Black Ridge Asset Management, LLC, and Geiger Investments are separate and independent entities from Peak Brokerage Services, LLC. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal. Any references to protection, safety, or lifetime income generally refer to fixed insurance products, never securities or investments. Insurance guarantees are backed by the financial strength and claims-paying abilities of the issuing carrier. This radio show is intended for informational purposes only. It is not intended to be used as the sole basis for financial decisions, nor should it be construed as advice designed to meet the particular needs of an individual's situation. Black Ridge Asset Management, LLC is not permitted to offer, and no statement made during this show shall constitute tax or legal advice. Our firm is not affiliated with or endorsed by the U.S. government or any governmental agency. The information and opinions contained herein provided by third parties have been obtained from sources believed to be reliable, but accuracy and completeness cannot be guaranteed by Black Ridge Asset Management, LLC. This radio show is a paid placement.